Hi guys, what's up? It's Kat here. Thank you so much for joining me for our very last, well, not forever actually, now that there's a season 2, thank gosh, but for now, for the time being, our very last post-Bad Batch review. It is the ripe hour of 2 o'clock in the morning. No, it's more like 1 a.m. No, it's like 2. There were things that I liked about this finale and things that I didn't like, I guess. I'm feeling very neutral about it. Was it what I was expecting? No, but I think that I personally, as a Star Wars fan, need to learn that, one, I think I need to just stop going into things with expectations, and I think I benefit much more and have a much better viewing experience when I go in having absolutely no idea what to expect, and I don't predict anything, and I just let the experience flow, and I let the content, happen, and I just enjoy it and feel grateful for whatever we're getting. And I enjoyed the journey, and I enjoyed at least having something Star Wars to look forward to every week and to have our watch parties and hang out and talk about it with my friends. There have been incredible moments throughout this series. I'm sure that there are big things in store for where this is going, and I truly believe that this season was a really good exposition for what is to come. What they are hinting at, this season planted a lot of seeds for a lot of different possibilities. There are a lot of places for this show to continue going, and I'm excited for that. All of that being said, this finale was not what I was expecting it to be. I had a lot of different ideas for how I thought this season was going to end off, and I guess that's one thing I have to say for this show. It continuously surprised me. Every week, I could not have predicted what was going to happen next. It still delivered. It did. Is it what I wanted it to be? No. But frankly, at this point in the show, as I had said, I don't think it would make sense for a huge cameo like Darth Vader to be showing up at this point in the season. I think the route they took made sense, and this finale accomplished something that I had been hoping for the entirety of this show, which is to focus on the Bad Batch themselves and address the tension amongst them here as a group, now having to deal with Crosshair. This is what I had been wanting from this show, and as I had mentioned, I had felt like the character development had plateaued a little bit midway throughout the season, as there was just more focus on the thrill of their missions and less on the dilemmas and the internal conflict in the characters themselves as a group, with their friend now working for the Empire and whatnot. So the final 2 episodes here and what they have done to advance this dynamic amongst the group and Crosshair now, it have been great. The focus on the confrontation and the tension now amongst them, and the way that they have emphasized Crosshair's loneliness now. I have just felt so much more empathy and sympathy for Crosshair in these past few episodes, realizing the place that he is actually in. Like I had said previously, I was genuinely terrified of Crosshair going into the finale here, because as we had all previously thought, he had been manipulated beyond the point of moral return with his chip. But to introduce the notion now that he had no chip and that he was doing everything on his own accord really shifted that fear even more, and turns the fear into just confusion and bewilderment, and just creates an entirely new dilemma of how are they going to get their friend back, if it's even possible at this point, without being able to take a chip out of his brain and snap him back to the way he used to be. And these past few episodes have made me just feel so bad for Crosshair, seeing his loneliness in the world, and that the Empire is really the only thing he has left to cling on to if he doesn't have his friends and his squad behind him, the Bad Batch. What else does he have if not Kamino is gone? The rest of the clones are gone. He never liked the Regs anyway to begin with. If he doesn't have the Bad Batch alongside him, what does he have? If not, just to follow orders and be a good soldier and obey the Empire for as long as possible in order to stay relevant and in order to have some purpose left. And so that was one of the most heartbreaking aspects of this finale for me, and one of, I think, the strongest aspects that it truly developed his character and set up what I'm sure is going to be a really great internal conflict for him going into the second season, as well as for the rest of the group. I'm really curious to see how they're going to split off. I was hoping that Crosshair was going to join them, but it was very clear that you could tell he wanted to. A part of him did want to rejoin his group, and it's evident that it's breaking his heart that they don't trust him anymore, and they see him as the traitor, and they see him as the outsider, and really all along he, felt like it was the other way around and that he had been abandoned by them. And so I think those were the strongest aspects of this finale, finally having some group dialogue as they all get to confront him and voice what they've been wanting to say to him all along, which is, how could you have done this? We were all friends. Him saying, vice versa, why couldn't you have come and saved me? Wrecker saying we would have if you had asked us. Just the tragedy that is Star Wars and what happens to friendships when the Empire comes into play and just tears everybody apart. On top of that, I think the score was phenomenal. The soundtrack of this episode, the music was absolutely beautiful. It was so incredible. It was my favorite soundtrack of the season so far. The visuals, stunning. The animation in this, the visual symbolism, I think, coming from an artistic standpoint, I feel like there was a lot of visual metaphors and symbolism taking place. For example, Crosshair, after Hunter basically looks him in the face and tells him, you'll never mean anything to the Empire like you meant to us. To them, you will always just be a serial code, a number. And Crosshair kind of brushes that off like whatever, but then walks away and goes and looks out this ginormous window on the bottom of the ocean floor. Crosshair is just this little, figure looking out into this vast ocean where everything has just, the debris has all come and fallen now to the sea floor. And for me, that was a super striking moment, not just visually, but symbolically. Is that even a word? It's 2 a.m. and I can't remember the English language. What that frame and just that image on its own, Crosshair standing there viewing all of this destruction sinking in front of his eyes. For me, it was very representational of his situation. He is so alone now. If he doesn't have his friends and if he can't regain their trust and love, he literally betrayed the Empire in a way to try to prove to his friends that he is still on their side and wants to be one of them. He is alone. If he has no friends, if he can't go back to the Empire, if the Empire truly does look at him as disposable and literally, open fire on Camino knowing he was still there, having that realization that he has nothing and he has no one, and even if the Empire does take him back, like what kind of life is that if all he does is serve as their puppet and they don't even care about him as a person? They literally just care about him as a soldier and his number, and that is it, and that is all he will ever be. That was a very tragic frame and a very tragic, metaphor that I feel like this entire episode was portraying visually, sinking to the ocean floor and completely being destroyed. Like, that is a lot of symbolic weight for all of the clones, and I feel like it's going to come out in season 2. And you could tell with even the Bad Batch and particularly Omega, the symbolism of them escaping, the planet and breaking free from the bottom of the ocean in the literal tanks, the tubes in which they came into the world, in which they were created and brought onto Camino. That was an incredible piece of symbolism. I feel like that was just an incredible full circle moment, them exiting the planet and literally escaping from the debris and the destruction in the tubes that brought them into the world. I thought that was sweet. Not sweet, but super, super tragic, because it just highlighted, the tragedy of the entire destruction and that moment the entire group has, looking at the empty embryo chambers, just this massive room in which clones were constantly being pumped out and now totally and completely devoid of life and empty and no more clones. That was a super heavy moment. You could tell the weight that this episode had emotionally for the Bad Batch. This was their home, and now they have no anger left now in the universe. And this entire season, really, they didn't have one. Like, Kamino was the one place, the clones were the one thing that, they still had, that they were a part of something. They came from somewhere. They had an original home. And, the Bad Batch pretty much being the emotional vessel representing the entirety of the clones who, as we could see from that one clone, approaching Rampart, saying and confirming, yes, the entire city has been destroyed, and the sense of distraught and angst in his voice as he had to deliver that message, even, you could tell it had a toll on him as well. And so I feel like there are going to be consequences of this. I was hoping to see like Rex or somebody in this episode, and to see Rex come to their rescue and see the destruction of his home and his brother's home. And I'm just hoping that will maybe be something that we get to see in the next season. So I guess at this point I'm super relieved and glad that there will be a season 2 ahead in store, because frankly I feel like this episode had a lot of exposition to it and didn't quite feel like a finale. It felt like it was building up to a lot of things and had a lot of momentum, especially coming off of the momentum of the previous episode. And again, I will reiterate though, it would not have made sense to have a Vader cameo show up at this point with absolutely no allusion to him or mention of him at all throughout this first season. This wasn't the time for that. I feel like this was the time to establish the group dynamic and their adventures and their problem solving abilities and whatnot, and do a little bit of world building to paint the picture of what is going on in terms of the Galactic Empire takeover at this point. Just being appreciative for having Star Wars content, because this content has been beautiful. The animation, the score, we are spoiled. If you look at where we started with Clone Wars and where we are now, the animation is truly just incredible. I look back at screenshots from some of the earlier seasons of Clone Wars and I'm just like, how was I able to watch that compared to what we are being spoiled with now? And so for that, I have to applaud the animators, the people, the artists, the technology blessed people who were able to put together such an absolutely gorgeous masterpiece of 16 episodes that were just continuously seeming to be even more beautiful than the previous one visually. And so I am just incredibly grateful that we have such gorgeous animation and incredible soundtrack. The score has been phenomenal this entire show, and especially in this finale, it was a truly emotionally impactful score. And there are so many great aspects to this show, and this finale really solidified one that I have just been craving more of, which has been the character development. And I truly feel now like the roots and seeds that were planted in this season will allow them to just pick up from the ground running in season 2. I will be patiently waiting for season 2. I'm really sad because this is my last review for this season, and I'm so appreciative that you guys hopefully enjoyed these reviews and that you stuck along with me and you are open with your thoughts and predictions. I am just so grateful that you guys even watched these, because I know a lot of my reviews at this hour of the night were not that coherent. So huge shout out to you guys for joining me along for all of these. Feel free, please share your thoughts on this finale down below. Were you satisfied with it? What did it live up to your expectations? What are your thoughts? But please, as always, keep things respectful and keep in mind of how many people and creators and artists and writers and everybody who had to go into the production of this show. Just keep in mind how large of a team it was to put this together and how difficult people worked behind the scenes, because I can't speak for y'all, but I know that I took literally 2 technology-based classes in college and they were the hardest things ever, and I would never do it again. So I applaud anybody who can do this stuff and pump out these shows with the time constraints that they have. So yes, just keep that in mind as you leave your reviews below. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. I hope you guys are doing so well as always. May the force be with you guys always, and I will see you guys again very, very soon. Bye.